Hello, good afternoon to all who are here in the session. I hope you had your coffee and your tea, and now you are able to follow the session. You don't see anyone here on the panel, but we have a panel on digitalization, and all our panelists, except us three, are online, so you will have the chance to look at them. I wish you a fruitful discussion and a good session. So I hand over to Ethel.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I know that you would really like to finish this afternoon session, but we have a very, very interesting theme. This is adult learning and education in digital environments. That is why you're very lucky to have the best of the best in this panel. So they're all virtual. So in this session, we will be discussing technology's role in achieving access and quality, while we also address equity issues in adult learning as well as education. You will listen to the top thought leaders of the world. I think I would like to tell you that we will be having the CEO of Moodle, CEO of Coursera, Saidi, Executive Director. We will also have a young African leader aerospace engineer from Kenya, and Vice Minister of Education of the People's Republic of China. I will introduce them briefly. So we have the experts, and together we would like to really discuss the role of technology, discuss the ways of overcoming barriers to effects of digital divide, and we would like to learn from them on how to expand equitable access to technology and how to enhance quality of learning. So our panelists are Mr. Martin Dogiamas, is the founder and CEO of Moodle. Many of us who are working in education and university, we know very well that this is an open source Moodle software project that he started since 1999. And this Moodle platform consists of a number of products. Moodle is best known for learning management system, and this allows us, teachers and educators and those in capacity building, to create our own private educational spaces online. And we will also learn more about collaborative learning from him. And currently, his research is focusing on open education technology. Mr. Martin is also on the board of Open Educational Global and the founder of Open EdTech Association. We also have with us Ms. Jenny Glennie, who is the Executive Director of South African Institute for Distance Education. Ms. Glennie is the founding director of Saidi, which is a nonprofit organization committed to enabling successful open learning for all. We know her for Saidi's OER Africa and also the African Storybook. So we have a female speaker, and Ms. Elsie Kima, as I said, is from Kenya, is an aerospace engineer, and she holds a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering, and She had extensive work with Turkey, Kenya, working on the delivery of solar PV plants, and of course, she also had social enterprise focusing on solving sanitation and waste management program. Oh wow, we would like to listen to her. Mr. Jeff Majuknokauda is the Chief Executive Officer, and he joined Coursera as CEO in June 2017. Since then, Mr. Jeff helped the company grow to over 102 million learners and 7,500 plus institutions, serving high-quality content from 250 plus of the world's top university. He previously started for 18 years as the founding CEO at Financial Engines, and Nobel Prize winner William Sharp Financial Engines grew rapidly under his leadership. He's our idol, right? And His Excellency, Mr. Sun Yao, will be joining us, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Education, Republic of China. And His Excellency, Mr. Sun Yao, is also previously Vice President at Harbin Engineering University and a member of Standing Committee of the CPC Committee of Heilongjiang Province and Vice Governor of Government of Heilongjiang Province. So, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sure that you would really like to listen to our experts. But let me say, are you with us? Are you with us? I'm like a teacher. Okay, zip, quiet. Okay, thank you very much. So, I think after introducing all our distinguished, excellent speakers, I would like to inform you that if you have any questions, especially for those who are joining us online, there is a Q&A box. And while speakers are presenting, please, write or jot down your questions. So we may be able to choose selected number of questions, and this will be responded by the speakers. And of course, this is a virtual event, so we will be giving our speakers at least 4 minutes to contribute to the discussions. So my first question, this will be a very engaging session because we are talking about, what is digital environment and its role in adult learning and education. So my first question is addressed to our Vice Minister from China. Your Excellency, I would like to ask you, how is technological change such as AI, online learning, presence of cheaper devices and mobile broadband, including 5G, changing both the content and modes of delivery of adult learning and education? Do you think you have this prioritized in your country? Can you share with us some of your thoughts on this technological change? Your Excellency, please.
长阁下、主持人、各位发言人、各位朋友、女士们、先生们，大家好！非常荣幸受邀参加第7届国际成人教育大会。我们相聚在云端，围绕数字环境下的成人学习和教育进行研讨，很有意义。我谨代表中华人民共和国教育部对本次大会的顺利召开表示热烈祝贺。 向精心筹备本次大会的主办方表示诚挚的谢意。中华人民共和国国家主席习近平指出，加快数字经济、数字社会、数字政府建设，推动各领域数字化优先开放升级。2021年，中国网民规模超过10亿人，手机上网人数超过10亿人，互联网普及率 达到73%，其中在农村地区，互联网普及率达到了57.6%。近年来，中国政府着力加强数字学习基础设施的建设， 积极发挥数字技术的作用，推进成人学习和教育。教育数字化已经成为建设学习型社会、助力实现共同富裕的重要支撑。中方愿交流分享以下做法：中国教育部积极推进教育数字化转型升级，有效促进优质学习和教育资源的均衡和开放共享。教育部先后印发了相关的教育信息化发展规划，2017年还专门印发了关于推进职业教育信息化的相关指导意见，积极加强教育信息化统筹，助力社会学习。在以下3个方面，我们积极作为，充分发挥数字化优势，助力成人学习和教育的数字化成果更多的向社会成员普及。第一，实施国家教育数字化战略行动，建设国家数字教育平台。今年3月上线了基础教育、职业教育、高等教育等3个国家智慧教育的分平台，汇聚海量优质数字化资源，面向社会成员免费开放。依托国家开放大学，建设了终身教育平台，汇聚各类课程资源超过50万门。通过上述平台和资源，广泛服务在岗就业人员和学生学习。数字化技术赋能终身学习，促进了教育的公平。第二，各类高校积极运用数字化技术，助力成人教育和学习。全国各类高校不断优化数字学习环境，面向成人开展灵活多样的数字化教育。中国有近3000所高校通过线上线下相结合，面向成人提供学习教育资源和机会，包括计算机、云教室、移动学习设备等，覆盖全国县域，广泛服务各类社会成员。第三，广泛开展老年人运用智能技术教育，帮助老年人适应智能化生活方式。教育部实施专项行动，指导各地推进各类社区教育与老年教育机构以及成人教育体系，通过多种方式开展智慧助老。教育部培训课程资源以及各方面的教育设施面向老年人开放，支持他们能够在学习过程中不断地提升掌握智能化技术的技能。自2005年以来，中国已连续17年举办全民终身学习活动周，引领各地各校和社区教育、老年教育机构开放学习资源，广泛开展各类学习活动。
Wow, thank you very much, Your Excellency. So we have learned that for China, they have prioritized digitalization. So the policy is there. There is also infrastructural support. And for the universities and higher education institutions, they have already adopted this one. What is more striking is that they do not want to leave anyone behind, and that even the elderly, those are given smart education and provided some sort of training, and also they have institute for them. Wow, what a good practice. But Your Excellency, I would like to ask, in your view, how does technology transform adult learning and education? And what do you see as the priorities for our policymakers? Your Excellency?
中国教育部通过实施专项行动，积极扩大教育资源和服务供给，助力缩小数字鸿沟，帮助社会各类学习者 特别是弱势群体掌握和适应数字化时代的变革以及相应技术，努力为农村和偏远地区的成年学习者提供充足的数字化学习资源和机会。在中国政府努力下，中国互联网普及率全国达到了73%，为广泛开展远程教育提供了数字化基础。2004年，由教育部发起，国家开放大学实施的一村一名大学生计划，利用人工智能等现代信息技术提供优质学习资源。截至2021年底，全国累计有91万人入学，培养毕业61万名学生，他们成为了农村的农业生产带头人和科技致富带头人、先进文化带头人，并引领更多农民参与线上学习。他们在实际农业生产和生活中起到了带头作用，而且也实现了脱贫致富以及引领大家共同致富的共享学习成果。一大批进城务工的人员也通过在农村的成人学习，得到了知识的提高，得到了技术技能的培训。该项目获得联合国教科文组织2020年度教育信息化奖，推动各类院校、社区教育和老年教育机构发挥数字化优势，面向成人广泛开展社区教育和老年教育。一方面，依托社区教育服务体系助力成人学习。现在全国已形成了社区教育研究培训中心、28个省级社区教育指导中心、280多个地市级社区教育指导中心，覆盖了全国1400多个县级社区和68万多个所在街道、乡镇学习的机构。通过全国社区教育资源共建、共享公共服务平台，汇聚优质社区教育资源，服务成人教育。另一方面，依托社会各类院校及老年教育机构助力老年人学习。开放大学体系已建成了近100所省级老年开放大学以及老年教育专门机构，全国其他部门也开设了若干所老年大学。下一步，我们将积极推动全国老年大学体系的建设，真正为老年人的学习提供更好的服务与支持。同时，我们发挥高等教育、职业教育、社区教育相结合的优势，在服务老年人学习的过程中，能够进一步共享相关教育资源。我们将积极推动全民学习，真正使老年人学习和成年人的学习能够实现网络化、数字化、个性化、终身化。这些基础与支持都可以使他们获得应有的教育资源的支持。加强学习型城市、学习型社会建设。目前，全国学习型城市建设联盟会员城市已经超过100个。下一步，我们将稳步组织实施学习型城市建设监测和典型经验交流，不断提高学习型城市建设的水平，持续推进全民终身学习的深入，并且做好活动周的工作，广泛开展社区教育、老年教育及各类学习活动，兼顾城乡各方面的需求，服务乡村振兴，积极促进学习型社会建设。中国倡导国际组织和发展中国家广泛开展职业教育和继续教育的国际合作，一是加强数字教育资源共建共享，满足不同学习者多样化的学习需求；二是共同促进学习型社会的建设，完善服务全民终身学习的教育体系；三是共同加强服务成人学习的教育和相关领域的能力建设，互学共建。今年，中国还将召开世界职业教育发展大会，成立世界职业技术教育发展联盟，召开2022年世界慕课与在线 大会，为加强与各国合作，搭建新的平台。女士们、先生们，中国政府愿与各方携手未来，同心协力，致力于教育的信息化、数字化、网络化、智能化的发展，为共同助力全民终身学习、服务实现可持续发展目标、构建人类命运共同体做出新的更大贡献。最后，祝愿大会取得圆满成功，祝愿各位朋友身体健康，万事如意。谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We have learned a lot from you, not only in terms of policies, but also programs, the response. And it cuts across like, curriculum development, integration of TVET. We also learned from you on, utilizing the open universities, and we, as co-constructor of knowledge and digital educational resources, that we can achieve access and equity if we will join hands and we will partner together all across and continue with your lifelong learning week and, of course, the presence of learning cities. So it's a lot of inputs from Your Excellency. Now, I think you are so excited to listen to our youth representative. Of course, we have here a young woman who has worked in STEM sector, and she has studied in Kenya, China, Turkey, and Germany. Seems like a global citizen. But for you, what were some of the challenges you face in quality of your education? And how relevant were your studies to what employers look for? Ms. Kima, can you join us to answer that question?
Hopefully, you guys hear me online.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Elsie, you have heard my question, right? We're so
Yes, I
excited
have.
to have you. Please share with us your thoughts on your journey and your, quality education aspiration. Please.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm honored to be part of this conversation. And yes, as you've mentioned, I've been somewhat of a global citizen, having studied in all those countries you've mentioned, and I've been in part of the most renowned universities in these areas. And it's been an honor and a highlight of my education. But I would say there are two challenges I'd like to talk about in terms of the education that I have gone through. And one touches on the learning techniques and access to technology, and I'll briefly touch on the social construct of STEM as a field in general. So to kick off with the first one around the learning techniques and the access to technology, I can recall while I was in high school and I walked into a computer class where we were supposed to learn about how computers work, how they communicate. I think there is a, can you guys hear me? I think I saw some response around not being audible.
We can hear you well.
Perfect.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I can recall when I started off in this computer class, we walked in and all we had was a chalkboard, a pen, and a paper. And we were supposed to learn how the computers communicate and, the programming languages and whatnot. And for my peers who progressed into their tertiary level of education and went through the same education system, they found a similar learning technique. So basically, a professor would give an assignment and then they would proceed to, expect some coding to be done, some access to software, and a report at the end of it. But the challenge becomes the infrastructure within these institutions was not sufficient to meet the demand of the students simply because of the student population. So the students had to find different ways to try and, make it work and make sure that they're able to suffice the requirements in order to pass their grades. And the most important part, I guess, it is the challenge around having access to these infrastructure. And I think if we are able to provide the sustainable infrastructure for some of these programs where the only way to be good at what you're doing is by actually doing, then we'll be in a step in the right direction. And then secondly, around the social construct around STEM, having been a woman in STEM, for me, how I started out was a very simple conversation with my parents, very easy, and they were very supportive. And after that, I had a relatable example, who was my sister. She was an engineer herself. She had finished her education and was starting to practice. But then you get into the classroom and, you know, you are one in like maybe 5 male students. So the ratio of male to female students was not balanced compared to a class that was probably about either business or economics. And this is something that cut across fellow female STEM professionals. And also from that, me as a person, it gets to a point you ask yourself, did I make the right choice? Am I actually going to be able to make it in this field? And it just gives you some moments of doubt. And also from an academic standpoint, the faculty, I think through my education, I have had a handful of female instructors for my STEM education, and not having sufficient representation of a female professional who has been established in the field, as an example, somewhat also brings about two things. One, again, into the doubt of whether you made the right decision into the field. And secondly, that this is a global issue because it's not a regional thing. You can say it's in a certain place due to a culture, but it cuts across the board. So it's something that is definitely affecting many, many female STEM students out there, and it's something that needs to be tackled. And I think overall, there have been things that have been done, policies put in place to aid the two challenges, but there's definitely a lot more that could be done.
Thank you
Back
so
to you.
much for that sharing. I have a follow-up question on what do you think are the skills that you got from studying, and are they relevant, and are they the skills and qualifications that employers are actually looking for? And did you do some additional lifelong learning programs to, you know, enhance your capacity, especially in STEM education?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the knowledge I gained was sufficient to give me a bit of and that is about, you know, the skills that there and some
Hello, Miss Elise. Can you turn off your camera so we can perhaps listen to you well? And we totally lost her. Maybe we will get back to her. It's okay to move on? Yes, all right. So this is another interesting question for governments. As we know, we have here panelists who are representing non-government sector and private sector. And we have this question for you in 12 minutes to answer. So governments are certainly not the only stakeholders in adult learning and education. But this technology, the emergence of technology, has disrupted, as we know, and altered ALE in provision as well as in content. And this has opened, diversity of private actors, and sometimes we see extremely powerful at the global level, especially during the pandemic, right? And in addition, technology has created new opportunities for collaborative action and production of common goods. So how does the open resources movement and integrating advanced technologies such as AI, support equitable and quality alternative adult learning education and opportunities for everyone. We would like to listen to Mr. Jeff, and then we will listen to Ms. Jenny and Mr. Martin. So, shall we start with Moodle CEO? Mr.
Absolutely.
Martin?
Hello. Of
How
course.
are you?
Hi, hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm calling in from Australia, where I live. It was very nice to hear about the Open University of China before, which is actually one of the largest Moodle sites in the world, using our open source software for free. And this is an example of the theme I want to cover. And I had three things addressing that question that I wanted to talk about. The first one is that technology is obviously not the answer for every problem in education, but it is an increasing part of the answer for every future problem. And the reason is that if we have digital in education, it gives us flexibility, it gives us accessibility, it gives us translations, it enables us to share and collaborate better around education. It's obviously really important that we also think about access when we go digital, but at the same time, we have to be thinking about what are people going to find when they get there. And that brings me to my second point, which is that technology is not all the same and it's not neutral. Some education technology and some technology in general is based on company models that are built on venture capital. So they're focused on profits, they're focused on control, they're focused on lock-in, and taking large amounts of money out of the education ecosystem as a whole. And that distorts the design of some systems, and it can contribute to inequity. If you end up having standard platforms that cost a lot of money, straight away you have an issue. So I really believe that we should be supporting, as a matter of policy, wherever we possibly can, the concept of open education technology. And like the internet itself, or things like email or the web, there's no company controls those things, no government controls those things, and yet it works for everyone and has worked for decades. So our education infrastructure should likewise be driven and collaboratively owned by the people who need it. The education institutions, education ministries, and so on, around open standards. And I've seen and lived this with Moodle for the past 20 years, and that's the development of Moodle. It's been a collaborative effort amongst educators in a community, and it's now used by 2/3 of higher education around the world. It's also pretty critical to point out that almost every .com you've ever heard of is completely based on Linux. Like, it relies on Linux to function. Linux is open source infrastructure. And so I really believe there is a great case to be thinking about how do we push that up so that the application space for education is just like that. It's open, it takes advantage of all the latest technological concepts to get the very best learning technologies into the hands of every man, woman, and child in the planet. And that in a way that doesn't exploit data, it doesn't put records at risk or behind paywalls. So the new technologies I'm talking about, you could summarize them as Web3, AI, VR, but it's really much more than these because it's all about how they're applied and how they're connected. We have the ability to create a way to connect all learning experiences through open standards back to universal recognition of skills. And this is something that's never existed before, but it is something that is within our grasp if we work together on it. And there are many great standards being developed, and it's a matter of putting our efforts, choosing the few that make the best sense and really doubling down on that. It means that we can, as individuals, all of us, as we learn, that we can collect evidence of that, recognition from others of our learning in a lifelong wallet or portfolio that we can use, that we can have AI helping us with our learning around that in a completely private way. We can also have web of trust models so that we can start to know as consumers of that information what really is important and what isn't important. So when we're looking at someone's learning, where did they learn it? Who did they learn it from? Who gave them that recognition? Do we trust them? And so there's a lot of work to be done in that area. And this brings me to my third point, is that we have to keep in mind here, because I heard a lot of talk at this conference and everywhere about the labour market, and that is clearly, obviously, a very important reason for learning, is to help and enable everyone to be part of the labour market. But just training people to be workers is not the goal of humanity only. A really groundbreaking event was the UNESCO 2019 recommendation on open education resources, which was the first step to shifting our thinking towards creating quality open resources and access for everyone. But I really think we can use technology better than just to share information and spread information around. We can use it to raise awareness amongst everybody of the big major issues in the world, the SDGs. We can embed them in the OERs. So our projects can explicitly weave these concepts through our OERs. We can make that part of our curriculums, support it in public education programs, and find the motivations and policies to make people see those things. So, maybe a simple example at a government level, maybe wouldn't it be great if to vote you had a little bit of a driver's license as a voter that showed you at least looked at some things, you thought about some things, you could make a better choice democratically. And I think there's something there. And it's, we have a new world that we can think about some things like that. So I think it's critical, just to finish up here, that government policies focus on creating more informed citizens, and that we think about it like that. Citizens who can help steer our democracies towards sustainable development goals and fixing the big problems. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. I'm very happy to see you finally after 15 years. We have benefited from Moodle LMS. In fact, for SEAMEO, we have used that since 2006 for all our online courses for teachers for free and dominated by ministries of education. Thank you so much, finally meeting the CEO of Moodle.
Nice to meet you too.
I would like to listen now to Saidi. Ms. Jenny, can you contribute to the discussion, especially on OER, the Open Resources Movement, and integrating this advanced technologies such as AI, as mentioned by Mr. Martin, in order for us to support accessible, equitable, and quality adult learning and education opportunities for everyone. Ms. Jenny of SAIDE, please.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to follow up on this Youth Day in South Africa. Today we are celebrating the anniversary, or celebrating, marking is perhaps a better word, marking the anniversary, the 46th anniversary of the Soweto uprisings in 1976. One of the few uprisings that was actually engendered by severe protests against the educational system, and in particular the curriculum and the language of teaching and learning in that curriculum. But as we do that, we mourn as well about the high level of unemployment in our country. The way I'm going to follow up is to speak a lot about open education resources, also to commend UNESCO for the open education resources recommendations that are now moving around different continents, and hopefully will see some be taken up very strongly. So I'm going to explain a little bit about open education resources, because people have often heard the term OER, but don't in fact understand entirely how it works. So education resources are obviously resources that can be used in teaching and learning, and open education, as has been made clear, is about sharing. And so it's about saying, well, if you have developed something that is worthwhile, that has been tried and tested, resonates with your learners, how can you share it? And are there controlled ways of so doing? Well, luckily, we have got such a controlled way. Firstly, you can start by asserting your copyright. That is, obviously, if you do own that resource, you haven't stolen chunks of that resource from other people and put it on there. So if you do own that resource, you can assert your copyright. And then you can give licenses to people to use them in different kinds of ways. You can do it in a restricted way, that simply people may download them, print them, and use them in that way. Or you may be a bit more expansive, and you can say, well, anybody may take these resources and they may translate them. And so you have now expanded the use of your resource across many different contexts with different languages as possibilities. And finally, you can also tie up some of the openness and say, well, if you do take my resource and you share it, and you translate or adapt it, now you must give it back to the community. And so in that way, you're increasing even more the resources that are available. These different licenses for use have been codified by Creative Commons and can be easily accessed on their website. I want to give you an example of how we've used this concept of OER to overcome what is a massive hurdle to embedding reading practices in young children in most African countries. Sadly, in many countries, and now with COVID, we are saying that it might be as many as 90% of children who are not able to read fluently. They might have had access to coded and reading books and learned the syllables, but they haven't actually learned to read fluently and for meaning. And one of the major hurdles for that is the absence of affordable reading resources in languages in which the learners are comfortable and reflecting local contexts. Just like you need a ball to learn to play soccer, so you need books, lots of books, to help you to read. 8 years ago, African Storybook began an African Storybook project. We were concerned about the shortage of languages that were, a shortage of storybooks that were affordable in our different countries. In many cases, we found languages where there were over 1 million speakers and yet not a single storybook available to help children learn to read. So the platform that we have developed, you can access a range of storybooks that we have developed with teachers across the sub-Saharan African region. They are organized by level and by language. They're all openly licensed, so you may access them online, download them, print them. The only restriction is that African Storybook and the author must be attributed. In that way, we assert our rights in this particular resource, in this work. But most importantly, and I think it speaks a little to the CEO of Moodle, we have also provided some kind of agency. This does not depend on us. We have provided the tools to enable you to translate a storybook of your choice, to publish it on the website, using the same images or changing them as you prefer. You can also add your name as a translator. Then these books will be available to anyone accessing the website. We have a lovely example of a young boy from Uganda, aged 12, who wrote a storybook that was uploaded on our website. It is now available in 58 different languages of the African continent. The website also has tools which allows you to create your own storybook and to upload images. But that was a quite tricky process, and so we have subsequently developed the Story Maker app. It's an award-winning app where it is much easier to create the storybook and in particular to upload the images, because you can assume that you can take photographs of a drawing or take photographs and then upload them. And in this way, you can excite children to actually not only read storybooks, but also create storybooks so that the reading and writing are simultaneously occurring. And this is particularly important for embedding literacy practices. This, as a matter of interest to UNESCO, it does mean that various marginalized languages can start to actually have a corpus of books available to them by utilizing the tools that we have provided to get them, first of all, to translate storybooks into their language. We've got a project doing this at the moment, and then encouraging that community to learn to write their own storybooks and create them from scratch in their own language. So in this way, we believe through the open education resources, we have actually contributed to overcoming a major hurdle to embedding these practices. At a different level, we also have an OER Africa project in which we are working with particularly academics and librarians at universities to try and to develop resources reflecting their own contexts, reflecting examples of knowledge that has been developed in their own areas, so that these can be shared more widely across the African continent and actually internationally, obviously. We have a number of resources that have been created in this way on the OER Africa platform, but we also spend a lot of time in encouraging educators to use open education resources. And I'd like to add the pedagogical aspect to this, because resources on their own are not an educational experience. You need an educator to help you design that learning experience and to think of the ways and to know about the learners who are likely to be involved in this, and to provide to them the opportunity to be very active, not only at the recall level, but also at the analysis and synthesis level, and furthermore in the creation level. So open education resources are a part of the puzzle. They are not by any means the puzzle in the whole. They do not make up the puzzle as a whole. Educators become essential, not necessarily in a face-to-face classroom, most definitely not, but educators become essential to actually designing the learning experience for particular groups. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Jenny, and thank you for the great things you do for the region, especially the South African. They now have access to quality and accessible learning resources, especially improving the reading competencies and literacies from, of course, K-12 and even beyond. Thank you, Mom. And would like to call on our next panelist, Mr. Jeff, the CEO of course, Coursera. During the pandemic, many teachers have tried their best to enroll in several Coursera, and this is, in fact, the solution during the pandemic, and we have seen that all across the globe. So what do you think is your contribution in terms of open resources movement and advancing adult learning and education, making it more equitable, quality, and available to everyone? Sir?
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me here. It's really an honor to speak in front of such an esteemed audience.
Mr. Jeff, we couldn't hear you. Can you try again?
Yeah. Yes. Can you hear me now? Is this okay? Is my mic working?
Yes, it's working. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to speak in front of such an esteemed audience. Like you mentioned, the pandemic has had an incredible impact on hundreds of millions of people. UNESCO in April of 2020 estimated that 1.6 billion students had their schools closed. And what we saw on Coursera when the schools closed and when most office buildings closed was a huge movement online. And the thing about what we saw, we had at the beginning of 2020, there were 47 million learners on Coursera. During 2020, that grew by another 30 million. Today, we're above 100 million learners all around the world. 80% of them are outside the United States. We also saw universities really embrace online education and not just doing Zoom, but actually using online recorded materials. And what we're really excited about is the opportunity for technology to change the way that people teach and learn, so that it creates greater access to education. But another big impact of the pandemic is that people have learned to work online as well. Now, we will still have campuses and people will learn on campuses, and we will still have offices and people will go back to offices. But the world is going to be a hybrid world where you don't need to go to a university or an educational institution physically to learn. And you don't need to go to an office to do many jobs, and certainly not every day of the week, in order to work. And I believe that what this was really creating is an incredible opportunity for anyone, anywhere to get access to good education. They need connectivity. They need basic K through 12 foundational knowledge and skills. But for the most part, education is now more accessible than it's ever been. And what we're seeing at Coursera is an incredible opportunity to reverse the saying that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. Economic opportunity is now more available to more people because of hybrid and remote work than we've ever seen. And this is only growing, especially for those jobs that employers are looking to fill. Jobs in entry-level digital positions, jobs in IT support, jobs in social media marketing, jobs in project management, jobs in finance and bookkeeping, jobs in UX design, jobs in cybersecurity. There are many, many, many millions of jobs that are available for people who don't have a college degree, who don't have any prior work experience. And these skills to learn these jobs can often be learned online, and the jobs can often be done online. So I think that there is an incredible range of opportunity post-pandemic that we haven't seen. Another thing that we've seen during the pandemic and since then is there is a greater benefit to women of online learning. What we saw on Coursera was a big increase in enrollments in courses from women before versus after the pandemic. So we have seen now about 45% of all course enrollments from women globally, and that's up from the high 30% range before the pandemic. And in STEM courses, in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, before the pandemic, about 31% of STEM course enrollments on Coursera were from women. That has grown to almost 40%. And in the US, it's up to 45% of STEM course enrollments are accounted for by women. So as our first speaker talked about, access and representation of women, not just overall in education, but in STEM-related courses, are very important. And then the final thing I'll just talk about is the way that technology not only creates learning opportunity and job opportunity for people who live in more remote areas, it also facilitates a level of collaboration that is unprecedented. So Coursera serves individuals directly. I mentioned over 100 million. But what is available to those individuals are courses from some of the top universities in the world, and now also industry providers, Google and Microsoft and IBM and Salesforce and Intuit, and many of the big industry players are creating educational material alongside the educational institutions. And what we're really seeing as well is job training programs online built by industry players being available now through academic institutions. So there's 4,000 businesses that use Coursera, and they're looking to fill entry-level digital jobs. Then we've got about 3,500 academic institutions who are using Coursera and the industry content to train their students for the skills to get these entry-level digital jobs. And then finally, we work with over 300 governments who act as facilitators to bridge this gap between industry and education so that industry training credentials can be made available to students in higher education and other vocational education programs. It's really an incredible level of collaboration that we're seeing that's made available by platforms and by technology. So we look to a future where greater access to both learning opportunity and economic opportunity is something that we see as a legacy and a better future going forward than what we've seen in the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeff, the CEO of Coursera. I think from all of us here, we have benefited a lot from Coursera. Can I see a raise of hands who use Coursera? Oh, a lot, okay. But actually, many teachers have resorted to these courses that are provided by top-notch universities that you can access all over the world. And if you want to enrich yourself, you can study, but if you want to have certificates, you can have a little pay, like $40 to $50, right? I also tried Coursera. And I see a lot of teachers who try to get 10 or 20 courses, and they post that in the Facebook. Accessible and equitable, quality education. There are lots of things that I want to say, but I think, Mr. Chair, Mr. Walter, we would like to call you to, lead the next phase of our discussion. Sir.
Thank you. We have now the chance to add some personal statements to what we just heard. I think there are four who asked for the floor. First, Mrs. Camélia Ntouré Leclerc from Gabon. The floor is yours.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, merci Monsieur le Président. Le Gabon, mon pays, dans sa quête d'une éducation, formation et alphabétisation de qualité, a fait le choix d'une politique éducative ambitieuse, généreuse, volontaire et inclusive qui garantit l'égalité des chances, des genres, l'équité et le respect des droits pour tous en intégrant l'ensemble des processus d'apprentissage formels, non formels et informels. Le taux de scolarisation dans mon pays est de 94%, dans l'enseignement primaire à parité égale. Seulement en 2013, nous avons fait un recensement de la population et nous avons réalisé que nous avons un taux d'analphabétisme de 27,72%, ce qui est un paradoxe. C'est pourquoi nous avons opté pour l'introduction des nouvelles alphabétisations des adultes en mettant en place 4 grandes initiatives. En nous basant sur un constat, l'extension de notre réseau Internet sur plus de 62% du territoire national, ce qui fait de nous l'un des premiers pays de la sous-région à être connectés grâce aux investissements que nous avons réalisés pour l'implantation de la fibre optique. Nous avons développé donc sur cette base des partenariats avec la société civile pour former des femmes dans le digital. Nous avons acheté plus de 3000 ordinateurs et dans chaque chef-lieu de province, nous avons des classes informatiques qui sont installées et nous les mutualisons avec nos élèves, nos étudiants également, parce que nous avons lancé cette année l'université numérique. Et pour la rentrée prochaine, nous allons également faire l'enseignement des adultes. C'est ça l'informatique, veut être un carrefour de rencontres intergénérationnelles pour une éducation de qualité plus inclusive. Mais nous avons des défis. Ces défis-là sont du cadre légal, réglementaire, pour régir l'organisation et le fonctionnement de ces centres d'alphabétisation numérique. Et nous voulons transformer 19 de nos salles d'écoute pour les destiner aux activités pour l'éducation des adultes. Mesdames et messieurs, ces ambitions se poursuivent avec la mise en place des formules alternatives d'éducation, donc des classes passerelles, avec une alphabétisation de qualité basée sur l'éducation, la responsabilisation et l'autonomisation. Nous voulons adapter et diversifier nos programmes aux besoins des populations cibles qui sont les jeunes non scolarisés, déscolarisés, les peuples autochtones, les adultes dans le cadre de la formation continue, les jeunes et adultes incarcérés avec le soutien de notre première dame, Sylvia Bongo Ndimba, qui a lancé via sa fondation le programme Solidarité Prison. Nos innovations, mesdames et messieurs, sont la promotion et la valorisation des langues nationales, notamment la traduction de notre hymne national dans 8 langues de notre pays via des applications numériques pour les rendre plus attractives et toucher le plus grand nombre. Nous avons lancé aussi un programme pilote d'alphabétisation fonctionnel et professionnalisant, coiffure, couture, commerce, mais aussi digital. Nous avons élaboré un référentiel en alphabétisation traditionnelle en langue maternelle. Nous avons commencé avec 2 de nos langues. Formation continue des enseignants dans les TIC et introduire l'enseignement à distance, car la pandémie de la COVID-19 nous a montré que nous devons réinventer notre éducation. Et nous voulons former les enseignants et les autres personnels du système éducatif en priorité dans les zones rurales. Mesdames et messieurs, l'éducation doit être aussi inclusive en tenant compte de la spécificité des adultes handicapés. En définitive, les nouvelles alphabétisations sont celles liées au numérique. La mise en œuvre est un puissant outil de promotion de l'éducation tout au long de la vie comme instrument d'autonomisation des individus, des communautés et des sociétés. Elles sont, pour nous, le fondement sur lequel peut et doit se construire un avenir durable pour tous. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. We have 3 more participants, Japan, and then Niger and Armenia. So I call on Japan first. The Assistant Minister, Kosei Abeko. Is here or? Not in the room? Okay, online.
Can anybody from the technique give a signal whether we can receive the, there we are.
There are approximately 14,000 community learning centers, or CLC, in our country, including facilities similar to community learning centers. In addition to being the most familiar learning facility for the local residents, CLCs also play an important role as a place for residents to communicate with each other and as a place where people can formulate the local community itself. CLC are also expected to play an important role as a local disaster prevention centers.
また公民館では住民の学習ニーズや地域の実情に応じて年間38万4000講座952万人が、学習しています。
At the CLC, approximately 384,000 courses and classes are taught and provided, which are catered to meet the learning needs of the residents, as well as the conditions of the respective communities. Around 9,520,000 people participate in these learning activities annually, which include courses and classes on culture.
しかし、このような講座は対面によるつながりや学びを中心としており、必ずしもデジタル化の対応が、遅れて、います。
However, but these initiatives are mainly conducted face-to-face. Therefore, from the perspective of digitalization, it is not in an advanced stage. It is still at an early stage.
コロナ禍の影響で、この対面の方が講座がオンライン両方ハイブリッドによる豊かな学びの実現が急速に進みました。
However, due to the COVID pandemic, the method is rapidly shifting into a hybrid of physical and online learning, which is capable of offering rich contents.
日本としては、公民館の社会教育施設のデジタル活用を促進することにより、世界にも視野を広げ、グローバルな視野を持ちながら、地域づくりやさまざまな問題解決の拠点としての機能を一層強化し、デジタルデバイドの解消をはじめとした社会的包摂に寄与できるよう、青少年や成人の教育を力強く促進していきます。
With this into consideration, While we will continue to promote the digital technologies in the CLCs and other social education facilities, we would like to broaden our views so as to look at the globe as a whole, so that we will be able to further enhance the function of these centers, so that in the end we'll be able to tackle various problems towards solutions, and at the same time building up the communities in this area. This includes the elimination of a digital device and also making contributions to a social inclusion.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Now I call on the representative of Niger, Mr. Aminou Yakuba.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je remercie la présidence de cette conférence pour m'avoir offert ce temps pour intervenir par rapport au numérique en alphabétisation. Notre pays a connu une évolution significative dans le cadre de l'éducation des adultes à travers l'élaboration d'un certain nombre de programmes destinés d'abord aux producteurs ruraux relativement à leur activité culturelle, à l'agriculture, à l'élevage. Il y a eu un autre programme d'alphabétisation destiné aux structures de gestion décentralisées de l'école. Et on a un autre programme sur l'autonomisation des femmes et des filles. Et on a un quatrième programme sur l'alphabétisation en Najami pour faire transférer les enfants au niveau de l'éducation formelle, des gens qui sont dans les makarantas. Donc, le taux d'alphabétisation au Niger est de 31,1 à ce jour. Pour permettre, pour faire le lien avec la question numéro 4 par rapport au marché du travail et le numérique, le ministère de l'Éducation nationale a opté pour la mise en place d'une stratégie de numérique en alphabétisation. Ceci a été matérialisé par le lancement cette année même d'une vaste campagne de numérisation des activités d'alphabétisation à travers l'Agence nationale pour la société de l'informatique qui est au niveau de la présidence du Niger. Donc ça, c'est une alphabétisation numérique qui va allier les compétences instrumentales de base et les compétences fonctionnelles pour permettre aux adultes de faire un transfert de compétences dans la vie relativement aux activités sur la gestion de l'école, le suivi de la fréquentation scolaire, surtout sur le maintien des filles à l'école. Et la leçon de Covid, très rapidement, nous a permis d'avoir la pandémie de Covid, pardon, nous a permis de tirer des leçons, ce qui nous a permis, en tout cas, de mettre en place un programme de numérisation des ressources en alphabétisation et éducation des adultes. Donc, nous avons mis ce programme à travers l'ANSI, l'Agence nationale pour la société de l'informatique. Donc, nous avons ce programme et on va doter tous nos apprenants des centres d'alphabétisation et d'éducation non formelle des tablettes et on va essayer de numériser. La phase pilote a commencé déjà et numériser ces ressources pour qu'ils arrivent à accéder à ces ressources. Et nous avons mis en place un programme de certification des apprentissages à travers l'accompagnement des MCC et de MCA, Millennium Corporation Account. Donc déjà 5000 apprenants ont été certifiés cette année. Et nous avons passé à la pérennisation de leurs acquis à travers une numérisation, à travers leur formation sur le numérique pour qu'ils puissent transférer les compétences dans la vie. Donc nous avons un certain nombre de programmes, mais ce qui va permettre en tout cas de nous faire comme perspective, c'est la disponibilisation de ces ressources numériques sur le plan national. Et nous sommes là en train de voir comment mettre à disposition toutes ces technologies, ces nouvelles technologies de la communication et de l'information, afin que nos apprenants puissent accéder aux ressources en alphabétisation et permettre de faire la gestion de leur affaire et d'être en tout cas compétitifs sur le marché du travail. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et voilà en substance ce que j'allais dire par rapport à la numérisation des ressources en alphabétisation et éducation non formelle au niveau du ministère de l'Éducation nationale du Niger. Merci. Merci.
Merci bien pour votre contribution. The final statement is given by Armenia, the Vice Minister of Education, Science, Culture and Sport. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Excellencies, dear colleagues, let me on behalf of the Republic of Armenia express my gratitude to UNESCO and Morocco government for the excellent organization of this important conference. Adult learning and education in digital environments both provide new opportunities and put new challenges for all countries. The new opportunities allow us to reach more people through digital tools to make adult education more accessible. And we saw this especially during COVID-19 when a number of education and learning programs transferred into digital platforms, enabling the access especially for those from remote areas and making the processes more cost-effective. But it also puts new challenges regarding digital divide and increasing existing inequalities. Creating community learning centers could be one of the options to overcome those inequalities, which is in the ongoing plans of Armenia, especially in rural areas. One important challenge connected with the digitalization that I would like to emphasize is the growing necessity of media literacy skills. Last year, we have conducted a special study on the media literacy skills among adults in Armenia with the support of DVV International, which shows that the most widespread source of information is social media, and quite often the issue is not the lack of knowledge or information among people on the specific topic, but the lack of skills. What to do with that information, how to check the source, or how to analyze, how to navigate through the diverse information chains. The second important point is that the development of these necessary skills is strongly connected with the fact of employment. Employed people more probably have the necessary media literacy skills, even if they provide less time using digital tools in comparison with the non-employed people. These are the skills that are being formed during the work, which means that we should include media literacy as a mandatory component in professional development frameworks, and we do so, for example, for the teachers' professional development programs. Another important challenge connected with the digitalization is the need for strong financial literacy skills, which could protect adults from the new types of risks. In 2021, we started new programs aiming to enhance financial literacy skills among women, as well among the population of rural areas, based on the good results of financial literacy projects that we are implementing at the school level for the decade. Ladies and gentlemen, adult learning and education are included in all relevant strategic documents of Armenia, showing the commitment of the government to make significant progress in this direction. We have also adopted recent changes in legislation, providing opportunities for new mechanisms to recognize the results of non-formal and informal learning and the real competencies. To move forward, we need reliable data, and I am glad to inform that last year we completed 2 fundamental studies in the field of adult education and learning with the support of DVV International, published recently and available online also in English. I hope we do keep learning from each other as we do during this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This was the last statement from the auditory. Now I hand over to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this afternoon is really very important because we're discussing about digital environments and adult learning and education. And we have learned that there are a lot of silver lining in the pandemic. We have learned that despite the pandemic, we were able to navigate by having technology with us. So our speakers have given us a better understanding of the infrastructure. They have created quality resources and digital materials, co-creating all of these digital quality knowledge that they have shared, not only for the country, for the region and the world. We take note of the suggestions coming from China and all our panelists that we should reach those who are more marginalized or at the disadvantaged positions. They have reached the adults, the senior citizens as we call them. We have seen also from our speaker representing the youth sector, it's very important to consider women in STEM education. We also learned that quality education can be there from SAID's experience, and that we will have to support infrastructure development in our countries so that this 2.9 billion people who do not have access to technology would have better access, because we only have 4.9 billion people who can have the advantage of this digital learning and digital infrastructure. So I think from the audience, do we have questions? No more. Okay. So no more time, sorry. But it's been a wonderful afternoon for all of us. And our chair is ready to really put down. I want to say some more, but he is ready with this one. I'm really amazed with that. So infrastructure, reaching the most marginalized, vulnerable sector of our society. We also need to look at the women, the girls, although according to the CEOs, most of those who benefited during the pandemic are women, but we still need to think about the others, the boys who are left behind, the boys who are dropping out, and they are actually the ones enrolled in alternative learning systems, especially in our region. And well, together we can enhance the quality of learning materials and just feeling free to share all of this. In our region, sorry, one more, the ministers of education in Southeast Asia during the pandemic have banded together to share the resources. They also help in developing materials, encouraging the best of the best, the teachers, to do the videos of the best teachings in mathematics, in sciences, and everything. So this is what we would like to do, that we will continue to share resources, open educational resources. And UNESCO is here. They supported normative instruments, and that is really very helpful for all countries in the world. So I think this is the way forward. A digital environment is here. We should continue sharing our resources, and that will, of course, benefit our learners, our lifelong learners. So, Chair, thank you.
The panel is closed. Have a good break.